Just when I thought you couldn't be any dumber, you do something like this, and you totally redeem yourself.
So, that is pretty much what we're thinking about Puppet Master the Littlest Reich. This was a reboot that had no continuity with any of the Full Moon movies. It's only credited for Charles Band.
Yeah, literally, it's not even like
creating the characters.
Continuity. Like a lot of movies will do, like, okay, all the continuity from everything else besides the first one out the window. Not even the first one.
No,
this
directly contradicts everything that we know.
I would honestly say it's more of a remake than a reboot, because it is a reboot. Kind of says like, oh, it's same continuity, but it doesn't really matter. This one's just, it's everything, like literally does just going this way, and then it just went this way in this one. It
was a great movie, I would say. It was a great Puppet Master movie.
It actually kept my attention.
Yeah, I was watching the entire time. I would say that it was in the top 5 of the Puppet Master movies.
The thing is, it's not even made by
It has nothing to do with Full Moon.
So, like, it's weird to say, like, I don't want to, like, compare it, because this one obviously had a budget, and, like, you could tell right at the beginning, like, quality of the camera was, like...
That's very obvious.
Acting was up there.
It had some big-name stars behind it, too.
Yeah, first time really big-name stars.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the stars first. So, Thomas Lennon from Reno 911, the main character in that, he plays the main character in this. And he's hilarious, and he's a competent leading man. And then there's also Udo Kier from so many of those like low-budget horror movies from like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
They actually had a German guy playing a German guy.
Yeah, he played Andre Toulon, who is now portrayed as a Nazi villain.
That was the biggest change from all the others.
Yeah.
The other ones, it's like,
was it?
Then this, they made him a Nazi, and it's like, okay, he's a Nazi now.
Because maybe if there weren't as many other Puppet Master movies and all the sequels weren't kind of crap in a way, I would have cared more about it. But like honestly, I was ready to see something entirely different, and this was something entirely different. It also had Barbara Crampton, who was like in Reanimator and Castle Freak, and she was in some Full Moon movies.
They had the one guy that was a New Girl. What was his name?
I forget his name off the top.
But he's a funny guy, so you could tell they kind of went with some comedic actors for this.
Which is definitely good. They, because when we were watching bonus features, they try to cast both, like, people who were known for, like, horror genre films back in the day, as well as some new up-and-coming, like, comedy people. And it did mesh pretty well.
It meshed. It didn't mesh weird. It was good.
So, plot-wise, there's not much to it.
It was almost like a compilation of kills.
Basically.
Throughout most of it.
There wasn't really
There's a lot of times they'd, like, introduce somebody 20 seconds
just to kill her later.
They die. The kills were good. They were actually used CGI very little. Very little.
Very minimal.
Sometimes there was a squirting of blood. Very occasionally that was, but the effects,
most of the time it looked
the effects were really good, and I have to give it to the effects. It was, and I think it had to
Which is the best part of the movie.
It had to be because of Fangoria was kind of behind it.
Yeah, Fangoria. This is their like first movie that they put out was their new like rebranding.
I would say that's probably why, because they appreciate the old horror movies that did the practical. I think that had to do with why they did it, and it worked really well. Like a lot of times I'm not a fan of the compilation kill movies where it's just like, here's somebody new dead, here's somebody new dead, but they did a good, there was like a plot.
There was like the main characters was Thomas Lennon's character, and there was like a core group of people, but yeah, it was mainly just a compilation of kills. So plot wise, there's a Thomas Lennon's character who, after getting a divorce and moving back home, his like kid brother had died like an unspecified years earlier, and in his room when he goes back home, he finds his
now that
doll.
I think about it, the brother dying wasn't that big of a
it wasn't
point of the movie. I kind of forgot about that.
But yeah, he had like this blade doll, so he takes it and finds out that it's one of like Toulon, who made so many of these different dolls, who also committed like a mass murder in America from all the way from after World War II up and through the 80s.
Yeah.
Because it starts in 89, which is when the first Puppet Master was.
That
so
was on purpose.
after that, they fast forward to all this stuff was like Tom and Lynn's character, and he wants to sell the Blade puppet at the 30th anniversary of the Toulon murders.
And kind of messed up now
and
I think
it's
about
also in Texas, which is kind of odd since like everything else was like in California before. But that's not, again, I was totally on board with something different. But anyways, that's pretty much the plot. They show up at this convention thing, and then all the puppets come to life and kill people. And there was a great number of kills, all done spectacularly. Some of the best in Puppet Master, and it probably had for the most great kills per movie out of all the Puppet Master.
Yeah,
films.
it did just.
It was like so many of them were amazing. Shane, if you had to pick one kill that was your favorite, what would be your favorite?
Probably when Torch burnt the two people.
Okay, so
That
Torch
was
is in
pretty
this
cool.
movie. Torch, I think, is the coolest looking puppet. His face, originally he looked pretty cool, but even in this one, he looks so much awesomer, because that's a word. And he just like flat out like burns these people alive, and it just looks so cool because you see that they're using real fire on the set. They like burn these mannequins.
Yeah, it
alive.
was.
And that's awesome.
But there's a lot of cutting and stuff. Like he cut some girl's neck
Mhm.
at one point. And they did practical there. Another guy's got their neck cut, and you could like see the windpipe that got severed and stuff.
My favorite one was it was the windpipe one because the guy is pissing in the toilet, and then
I forgot about that one actually.
one of the puppets comes up, slices off like his neck, and like you can see like all the blood gushing out in the windpipe. But then they cut off his head, and it lands in the toilet, and he keeps pissing on the toilet.
You see a little head of the penis peeing.
Yeah,
on
you
his
see
face.
that too.
And it was just like, oh.
It
Nice.
was amazing, and I loved it. But yeah, there's so many other good kills and like kind of memorable characters. I love the main cast. There's also this black bartender named Cuddly Bear that survived to the end, and I thought he was hilarious. And yeah, all around it was great kills. Great effects was those kills. Memorable characters. This is pretty much the best you're gonna get for a Puppet Master movie. I don't think they can make a better movie.
I don't even think the next
than this.
one will be.
Like, is it a perfect movie? No. Like, you can still tell it was like a lower end budget movie, but totally skyrocketed from all the other Puppet Master budgets.
Oh yeah.
But no, it was pretty much the best you were gonna get, and it did not let me down. I was hoping for the best, and it delivered. So there's a ton of puppets in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's only 4 returning puppets: Blade, Pinhead, Tunneler, and who I'm just missing one right now. Torch. Yeah, they're the only 4 that come back. So no Jester, and this is apparently like the only one without Jester. But yeah, they keep like the 4 most intimidating puppets.
Yeah,
so
like
I got behind that. But there's so many
bunch
new
of
puppets.
new ones that like you just see for like one.
Yeah.
Little bit.
And there's also multiple of the puppets. Like there's multiple Blade dolls. There's multiple of all of them. So there was just so much carnage to go around. I'll just try to like go through the puppets really quick. I had to write them down because I could not remember any of these names. The one that got the most talked about in the pre-production stuff was a guy named Happy Amphibian, who's like a clown frog thing that spits darts out of his mouth. There was a Mechanicer, which is kind of like just something that just kind of like something that drives on the ground, and he looks like a metal robot. Auto Gyro also is like a flying version, or maybe I'm mixing those two up. No, yeah, Auto Gyro
is probably the flying. They don't say these names actually in the movie.
But yeah, we watched the bonus features to get a lot of this. Auto Gyro is like a guy who flies and like went around and slices a bunch of throats. Grass Hooper or something like that is however you say grasshopper in German. He was just like a grasshopper puppet that would hop right at you. Mr. Pumper wasn't in it a lot, but he was just kind of like sitting on
pump.
Yeah, he was just a gas pump thing that like take the blood out of your body.
Yeah, he's like
pump it
bouncing
out.
and it's just pumping out, and it's just like what?
Kling, I couldn't find much about this guy, but he was kind of looked like Blade, but he had like a more like skull and deformed looking face. So there was one that kind of looked like a chipmunk raccoon kind of guy, but I'm not really sure what his name was. I couldn't find it out.
Krakenhaus.
Then there was a guy named Muddy Linder, who looked like a very stereotypical.
He looked like one of those Jews from propaganda.
Yeah.
And his name is Moneylinda, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah. We'll talk about some of the maybe too far kills in a moment. And lastly, though, there was a guy named Junior Fear that was a baby Hitler.
Then
and
they
kill
shoot him,
baby
and then
Hitler.
they throw him in the oven. Haha. Dun-dun.
So there were two things that I love that this movie just like really pushed the envelope over what I can't believe they showed that.
Yeah, there's one I'm like
one of the
okay.
puppets cuts inside of a pregnant lady and then bursts out of her stomach holding her unborn child and runs away with it.
It was moneylender. It was essentially a Jew stealing a child. That was
too far, maybe. I love movies that push the envelope. As you can tell from some of our films.
Too far, and I was like, I don't like that.
And then there was another part where after like there's a big massacre outside of the convention center, and they're trying to run back inside. Cuddly Bear sees this kid over his dead mom, almost like crying. So he runs over and says, like, "Kid, like hold on to my shirt. We'll run inside. I'll save you." And he runs inside, and then like auto driver comes down. And you see like blood fly. So right when Cuddly Bear gets in, he turns around. Doesn't see the kid. The kid's severed hands are attached to his body.
The main guy character,
Thomas Lennon.
his son played that character.
Yeah, and I thought that was hilarious. Apparently, he was a huge like Puppet Master fan.
Well, I
he
think
was, like,
I
really
think right when he said yes to the role, his son like watched the trailer for the first one.
They said his son made his own Blade doll at home with his mom.
That's cool.
And they're like, oh, that's so cool. So there was great kills, maybe some too far kills, but I like movies that push the envelope. The only, to me, disappointing thing was it didn't really end, like, it just kind of ended. It didn't have a conclusion. It even said to be continued at the end. So they need to make another sequel. It's been 2 years, and
2 years,
nothing has happened yet.
For like Puppet Master, that's way too long to wait. But for like an average movie, I could.
Oh yeah.
If it happens in the next 5, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's any production going on. I couldn't find any notice about
it very well might just stay
because there were some surviving characters. Thomas Lennon survived, Cuddly Bear, the police officer. But what disappointed me the most is that it just kind of ended. Thomas Lennon and his girlfriend find out where Toulon is like starting all this stuff up at.
Yeah, Toulon's in his like mausoleum, like
as some like weird zombie like monster being. I don't know what it was.
And then they stop him, and he comes out. He goes in and grabs his like a box at his Luger and just like yeets the main character's girlfriend right.
And then
in the
just
head.
walks away into the woods.
Then walks into the woods, and it's like, well, Toulon's still out there.
Yeah. So then like Thomas Lennon's character gets back into writing comic books. He's a comic book author, and then he
makes a
comic
book,
makes a comic book
which
about
is kind
what
of messed
did,
up.
Which is very messed up. Yeah.
Like he's
and I don't. It just kind of ends. He's pretty much says to be continued.
Yeah, in the comic book it says to be continued, and then he's talking to somebody, and it just says.
Yeah, talking about how like the story is not concluded yet in his comic book, which means like the movie is not concluded yet, and it just kind of ends, and it didn't have a good ending, in my book, and that would be the most disappointing part. Like if it doesn't get a sequel, it really kind of botched it in my book.
To me, it's a great movie, and if it gets a sequel, it'll just like solidify it. If it doesn't, I mean, it kind of sucks. It's one of those movies that's like.
Oh well. So in conclusion, if you're a Puppet Master fan, you will love this movie. If you're a fan of gore and practical effects, you will love this movie.
Yeah, it was definitely practical effect-wise one of the better horror movies to come out in the last little while, just because you get too much CGI now.
It felt like a throwback to some of those old.
It's kind of like how Hatchets have stayed with the practical effects when most movies now don't do that.
So it's worth a watch, and I would recommend it
Definitely
to any horror
actually
fan.
one of the best Puppet Masters by far.
Go out and watch it now.
Yeah, seriously. And like we've been
stop watching these reviews. Watch the movie.
We've been like pooping on the last like 3 at least, and they were just like let us like I would literally be watching, but I wasn't paying attention because they weren't good. They didn't hold it, and then like Full Moon doesn't make one, and somebody
else good.
And it was like, oh my god, this is actually good, and I'm kind of afraid to go to the next one now.
Yeah. So speaking of, we will be reviewing a movie that's not even on DVD or Blu-ray yet at the time of this viewing, but we will find it on the Full Moon streaming channel. It is Blade: The Iron Cross. It is a spin-off within the Full Moon universe.
So not in this continuity.
No, it's going to be in around the Axis trilogy kind of continuity.
So that'll be interesting.
Stay tuned for the next episode.
Don't do it.